You wake to dead silence. The hum of your refrigerator is gone. The streetlights outside are dark, and your phone displays a chilling 0 bars of service. It is not a rolling blackout. The silence stretches for hours, then days, and a suffocating realization sets in that the city around you is rapidly becoming a concrete trap. The complex, interdependent matrix of just-in-time logistics, water pressure pumps, traffic control grids, automated refrigeration requires constant high-voltage equilibrium to maintain the illusion of order. Without it, the thermodynamic reality of urban decay begins a fatal countdown within 72 hours. Mainstream survival advice pushes the narrative to pack a heavy bug-out bag, load your vehicle, and merge onto the nearest interstate highway. But this ignores the hidden principle of fluid dynamics in mass crowd psychology, which dictates that primary transportation arteries will undergo immediate and fatal coagulation. The highways are not escape routes, they are terminal kill zones of gridlocked steel. Traffic flow models from historical mass evacuations demonstrate mathematically that a 4-lane highway hits absolute zero velocity in just under 3 hours when human panic exceeds infrastructure capacity. Your vehicle is now a tomb. You must abandon it and rely on kinetic, ground-level movement through non-linear urban topography. But as the surface traffic gridlocks, a deeply misunderstood and far more lethal threat is already rising from the subterranean levels below your feet. Toxic, heavier-than-air gases are silently venting into the surface streets from disabled, overflowing sewage lift stations. You cannot smell the hydrogen sulfide until it reaches lethal concentrations, at which point olfactory fatigue instantly paralyzes your receptors, shutting down your ability to detect the poison entirely. Modern municipal sanitation relies on electrically driven pneumatic pumps to force thousands of tons of raw organic waste uphill to treatment facilities. Most civilian preppers assume water sourcing is their primary bug-out priority, completely ignoring the aerodynamic threat of airborne biohazards pooling in dense urban corridors. The neglected science of urban microclimates creates localized high-velocity wind tunnels between skyscrapers, funneling these toxic gases directly into the exact pedestrian pathways you plan to use for your covert escape. Atmospheric dispersion mapping conclusively proves that ground-level toxic accumulation in a grid-down scenario mirrors the behavior of a catastrophic flash flood, pooling in the lowest topographic elevations where desperate people are inevitably trying to flee. Your only survival implication is to immediately navigate using topological ridgelines within the concrete jungle, moving across elevated transit lines or structural rooftops to stay above the invisible suffocation layer. Yet elevation brings its own fatal consequence. As you climb higher to escape the chemical chokehold, you violently expose yourself to the next inevitability of the societal collapse. You are now completely exposed against the urban skyline, an isolated thermal target in a densely populated sector, plunging into desperate starvation. The psychological pressure of this isolation rapidly mounts, turning every ambient sound in the dark into a potential predatory threat, while acute dehydration begins to thicken your blood plasma, drastically reducing cognitive function. The human brain, running on a massive caloric deficit and overwhelming cortisol spikes, begins to misinterpret raw sensory data. The primitive amygdala aggressively overrides the logical prefrontal cortex, leading to irrational, hyper-reactive decision-making that will get you killed. Standard survival manuals uniformly insist on moving exclusively at night under the cover of darkness to remain unseen. However, this critically violates the hidden principle of human optic physiology in zero-light environments, which dictates that peripheral motion detection becomes exponentially hypersensitive in the dark. Moving at night in an urban landscape without ambient light makes you a high-contrast kinetic anomaly against completely static backgrounds. Military night combat data clearly shows that without advanced night vision capability, slow, deliberate daytime movement through deep structural shadows provides a significantly higher evasion survival rate than stumbling blindly through a pitch-black, debris-filled city. You must weaponize the shadows during daylight, using the sun's shifting angle and architectural geometry to meticulously mask your visual signature. But time is evaporating, and the city's final failsafe is about to violently breach. The distant, echoing roar of structural collapse is beginning to physically vibrate through the concrete beneath your boots. Massive municipal water towers scattered across the skyline, now completely unpressurized and unmaintained, are beginning to structurally tear themselves apart due to regulated backflow vacuums. When millions of gallons of water sit completely stagnant in a rapidly depressurized pipe network, the resulting hydrostatic shock from sudden vacuum pockets can shatter underground cast iron mains with the explosive force of a seismic event, instantly undermining building foundations and collapsing streets. You mistakenly thought leaving the city meant merely walking away from a quiet, static dead zone. The terrifying reality of civil engineering is that a modern metropolis is not a passive object. It is a highly pressurized, mechanical organism. When its electronic nervous system dies, its massive mechanical organs do not simply spin down and stop, they violently rupture. Forensic engineering analyses of abandoned disaster sites show that catastrophic subterranean infrastructure failure occurs exponentially within the first 30 days of total grid failure. Your planned bug-out timeline is a deadly illusion. You do not have 3 days to carefully decide your next move, because the very ground you're walking on is actively digesting itself. True survival is not just about escaping the wrath of nature, it's about surviving the violent death spasms of our own artificial world. The concrete jungle does not quietly fade to black. When the grid dies, the city becomes a collapsing star, and if you wait for the final warning, you are already part of the debris.